over the years, you've worked with some of the biggest names in MMA, you've worked with some of the biggest names in boxing. You've now starting to work with some of the biggest names in entertainment and YouTube. Now, I've
Yeah.
seen you work with KSI in the past. What's that been like for you? Kind of that injection of youthful exuberance, so to speak, into boxing.
Yeah, it's been. I worked with AnEsonGib too when he fought Jake Paul. But yeah, it's a different world. I tell you what, my Instagram's just kind of jumped up working with KSI, right off the bat. But like Michael B. Jordan, when I did the Creed movie, the same thing with KSI. When he came into the gym, I wrapped his hands every day, same system as Michael B. Jordan. But I told him, I said, look, here you're a fighter. I'm going to treat you like you're a fighter, not like you're whatever you do. And I didn't even know what the hell he did. But he respected that. And then every day I would try to give him, what's in Spanish, consensos, give him some advice on how mentally to prepare yourself, physically to prepare yourself, and, try to guide him that way. And the same thing with AnEsonGib. And, when I saw Gib for the first time, I'm looking at him, I said, well, the guy didn't even know who I was. So I said, man, I know this guy, he has a nose. And I said, man, he can't fight. But I tell you what, when it came to showing the heart of a warrior, even though he had so many strikes against him, Gib actually towards the end of the training impressed me. Not that he had great skills, but he had the heart to go out there and do something that he's never done before, and that's to go into combat. So respect to these two guys. And, I'll be working the Jake Paul fight with Ben Askren, and I think Antonio Tarver is fighting Frank Mir. So I'll be involved with that. And so that's the new generation, and I understand it. I know a lot of the boxing people, a lot of the media people don't understand it, but I always look at stuff on a marketing aspect. And what's the best way for someone like The Zone to create new clients is to bring people in from other generations of activities to come in and show their goods. And seems to work. I don't mind. I don't mind at all. The pays are good. I know when I worked with KSI, there was like 7 of us, the team from Las Vegas to LA. They flew us in a private jet, and then we stayed at a hotel at Beverly Hills. And I walk into my room and my pillowcases have my initials, and so it kind of took me to a different platform that I'd never been before. But they're fun. They're fun and they're exciting. And, I knew that it was a different clientele, because when KSI first walked, when we get into the dressing room, first thing we do is we go into the ring and we talk about our positioning. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So it's Viddal, Riley, and Leon. The 3 of us walk into the arena, and everybody's calling out Viddal's name. Nobody knew who I was, so I knew it was a different world, But I'm glad to be part of that. Like you said, I've been blessed to work so many different areas of combat sports that I've been blessed.
It's very nice to hear you say that, because I mean, it's as somebody as yourself who's worked in combat sports for so long, you have such a kind of worldly view of the sport. As you mentioned, boxing as a sport, we often kind of shun anything that's new, and we like to keep things traditional. We like to keep boxing kind of as itself. So it's really interesting you would say that. You mentioned Jake Paul there. He's somebody who's getting a lot of airtime over here in the UK. He's been calling out, I think the other week he called out Canelo. He's been calling out Tommy Fury, Tyson Fury's brother, who you would have known.
Yeah.
What do you make of Jake Paul? 1 or 2 people, myself included, actually very surprised at his skill set.
Well, I wasn't surprised because, BJ Flores, I've worked with him before, I know, but Jake Paul came out of a wrestling background. And when I had my school of kickboxing, Rob, guys that had wrestling would come into my school of kickboxing. They became good fighters because they'd been through that before. So I knew that if Jake Paul had that skill level before to come into the boxing game, he understands the sweat of the hard work of getting to where you have to get. And then BJ Flores is a very good coach. So yeah, he's doing a lot of marketing. Everything's marketing 101 for these guys. That's how the platform is for them. I understand that. So there's an article where Dana White was saying that, he would bet $1 million that Ben Askren would beat Jake Paul. And Jake comes back and says, well, look, I'll bet you $2 million. Let's put it on an equity fund right here. Let's just put it there in the neutral fund to stuff like that. But being what had happened to me with the UFC, I put in a comment that if that happens, I want to be Jake Paul's cutman, just to be on the winning side. So yeah, so just throw a little bit of a dash in there, and I think Dana would shit if he saw me on the other side.
When was the last time you spoke to Dana? Obviously, we've seen kind of the well documented issues that between yourself and Dana in the past. When was the last time you spoke to him?
Oh, way before, when I was still with the UFC. He didn't even have the balls to call me when they got rid of me. So people would always ask me, well, that question, and I said, well, what would you say if you saw Dana? I said, man, I'd shake his hand and say thanks for letting me go, because it's the best thing ever happened to me. And then the thing about it, growing up as a farm worker, Rob, my parents were always fighting for fair practices, and I felt that what I did as a cutman, representing the cutman, I did, and the fighters, I did the same thing. And just a side note to that is, during the bubble here at Top Rank, there was a Brazilian fighter that fought, and one of the coaches is Andres, that works with a lot of the top Brazilian fighters. And so we're having lunch, and he says, Stitch, we have so much respect for you because you spoke up for us because we couldn't speak up. And I thought that was, it just gave me chills right now just to repeat that quote. But it seems that that's the way it turned out, that these guys were still under such scrutiny that they can't say anything. I know Dominic Cruz just fought over the weekend, and he called out the guy from the representative from Monster, because I guess the guy had been using these guys. And, Dana told him, for the most part, shut up, you're getting sponsorship. So it shouldn't be that way. These guys they're professionals. They're modern day gladiators. They sacrifice their bodies and their minds for our entertainment. And they should be respected a lot more than they are.
You make a good point there. You're probably the best person who I could speak to about kind of the difference between MMA and boxing, because you've been so entwined in both sports. So a lot of talk is about, MMA coming hot on the heels of boxing, MMA taking over, boxing's dead, so to speak, which has been, something that's been repeated for the last 100 years. Where do you stand on the whole MMA versus boxing? Is the town big enough for the both of them, so to speak? Is MMA going to surge past boxing? What's your kind of viewpoint on the comparisons and the contrast between the two sports?
No, that's a good question. Boxing is never going to leave. You have guys that are boxers that will stay in boxing. MMA now has grown to the point where the new generation, the young kids, are training jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and more into the combat sport. I think entertainment wise, I love working MMA, no doubt about it, because it's so exciting. But to understand all the elements for a young viewer, the grappling and the kicking and the elbows and the takedowns, it took me a long time to understand it. And I still don't understand it when they get on the ground and they twist each other like pretzels. But I respect what they do, So yeah, I think both sports are here for the long run. I've been working the bare knuckle fights also, and that's the new sport that's growing in leaps and bounds here in the United States. And I think Shaq O'Neal just, he wants to be an investor in it, So people love seeing action. They love seeing fights. They love seeing cuts. And I'm glad I'm a cut man for all three of these. So work has never failed. That's for sure.
Okay, Stitch, I do appreciate the time. The last question I have for you, you mentioned Viddal Riley, who you would have known as I guess, as a trainer of KSI, but of course as a fighter himself. Now, he's since stepped away from the KSI training camp to forge his own career as a professional fighter, obviously trained by Jeff Mayweather, signed to Mayweather Promotions. What's the future like for Viddal Riley? Very switched on, very engaging young man, very talented young man. Where do you see him going in his future?
Oh, I think a long way. I've worked his fights, and I know the first time that I worked his corner, I didn't even charge him. In fact, I haven't charged him because they're 4-rounders. So I give back. But like I told Viddal, I said, the reason I'm doing this is so that you can understand the importance of having a good corner. But during the training, I've seen him, I'm in the gym. So I seen him work. I said, you know what, man, you're like a young Muhammad Ali. And skill-wise, he's getting better and better and better. So I'm glad that he's taking this seriously. And, I see a long future for Viddal. Such a good kid. And, knowing the history that his father trained him as an amateur and all that. And I love to meet his father. But he's just a good kid. And, Rob, these are the kind of guys that I like working with. People, I don't do good with assholes. It's not my thing, right? But the guys that I've been working with have all been decent guys. And it's good just to be part of their history.
Young Muhammad Ali is quite the compliment. Stitch.
Well, it is. It no doubt about it. But just the way he moves, yeah, of course, you know. And if you see, you know, what he's done with himself, I think you would probably agree with that. You know, to a point. I know you get Stitch is full of shit. No, Viddal is, he shows good promise. He does real good promise. And it was funny because the first fight that he had was I think at the MGM, and or yeah, that
It was on
MGM
the
has a
Adrian Broner on the card.
Yeah, yes, I think so. So after the fights, I'm in the back, and the coach from the other side comes and of course he wants to take a picture with me, and he says, you know, when I saw you in the corner, I knew we were in trouble. You know, but but you know, that just goes to show that you corners are so important. You know, especially in boxing. You know, the thing that irritates me in boxing, there's so many guys, because the way I always say, Rob, real quick, is this is combat sports is the only A-level sport where we don't have to be certified to be considered a professional. That goes for a trainer, that goes for a cutman. And in boxing, more so than MMA, there's so many guys that know nothing about the game. You know, cutmen, if you notice the cutmen, in MMA, they all wear gloves. They all have the wrist wrap where they put their swabs. They're not putting them in their mouth anymore, in their ear. That's a formula that I put together that everybody's starting to use. A small towel to wipe the towel, you know, the Vaseline on your hands so you can just kind of get it. Those are techniques that work. And if you look at boxing, a lot of these cutmen don't wear gloves. They got the swabs in their mouth and they got them in their ear. And it just, they're two different levels of knowledge when it comes to that. Guys in boxing seems like they don't want to learn. And guys in MMA, being such a new sport, they want to learn and they're doing the right things.
Well, if you want to learn about cuts or anything else in boxing, then Stitch Duran is your man. He's the first person that I would call. Stitch, thank you very much for your time. It's always a real pleasure catching up with you. I can't believe it's been over a year since I saw you face to face. Hopefully, I will see you sometime in May when I get out to Las Vegas for Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. But until then, be well. I hope that you enjoy getting back out to the gyms. I'm sure you will. And I hope you stay very, very busy. As always, real pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social, Stitch Duran.
Always, Rob. It's always a pleasure, man. Let's do it again.